Ahoy, my friends, Ryder here, and welcome back to another Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis video. Today I'm going to be getting into the to pull or not to pull video, kind of my overview of the new Cid and Lucia banner, which has just recently dropped in the game. Thankfully, it is our second non-limited banner in a row. I'm hoping for a whole month if that is possible. But based on the kind of layout of timing for when we've gotten new characters in the past, it would make sense that we do get a new character actually in April. Though I'm kind of wondering if they're going to do that or not, because I feel like them adding new characters to the game at this point is not really benefiting the game as a whole. Obviously, characters are already being kind of disregarded. I mean, this is Lucia's first banner, guys, in quite a long time, maybe since last summer, so almost been a year. So the more characters they put in the game, the harder it is to feature all these characters, the more they get disregarded, and I just don't think it's really beneficial past a certain point. I could see them dropping Cisne into the game and Genesis into the game. At that point, I feel like it gets kind of niche, Anyway, little tangent. Let's talk about the banner at hand here. All right. So the first thing I want to do is actually see the animations. There's two of them here to check out today. All right. So here's Cid's Dragoon Lance. Pretty sick. Looks super cool. All right. Here's Lucia's. Her costume looks amazing. And also, I like her animation as well. I kind of like that tornado thing going on. And there's Zack's. If you guys happen to get his ultimate weapon, good luck on that. All right. Now let's go in here and let's take a look at these. So my first impression, guys, is that this banner is pretty skippable. I think that if I had to choose to go between this and the Zack banner, to go for a costume, because you're pulling for a costume. On non-limited banners, you're basically pulling for costumes, right? So because you're going to be able to wish list the weapons later on. So I think if you compare this to the Zack banner that just came out, I feel like pretty easily it's a gimme to Zack, even with both of these things here. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more. There's things that I like about the setups, and there's things that I don't like as much. But guys, I want to say that I think it's also a really positive thing when there are easy skips in the game. I think that should be kind of, I don't think everything should be absolutely must-have, or else we get to the point where at the beginning of the year, where the first 3 months was so much must-have stuff, and the entire community got super burnt out. Right? We had to rise up and revolt and send thousands of messages to Applebot and Square Enix, and they heard us. So hopefully that's the case. All right, so let's take a look at this costume. We're going to look at Cid and Lucia today. All right, I wish I could zoom out more. For some reason, I cannot. All right, so let's check this out. Pretty simple. Honestly, I like this. I like the little the whatever's going on right here. It looks very captain-y, like he's of a, the captain of an airship or something like that. The spear looks okay. I feel like the turquoise on the handle here kind of makes it look a bit toyish. But other than that, I think it's pretty cool. It's got a pretty cool color variation going on. I like the gloves. I like the overall leather accent on the jacket right here, and how it kind of comes over, very Japanese style, how it goes past the middle right here and comes over. Other than that, guys, I think it looks pretty sick. I mean, pretty standard boots, pants. I think the costume is pretty sweet. If I got this costume, I'd probably be skinning this costume for most of the stuff with Cid, since I was not really a fan of the astronaut costume. I did not think that one looked very good. All right, now I guess we'll just do them one at a time. So let's go to Cid's costume. All right, so physical and magic ward is a great R ability. I like this R ability. Makes no sense to me why Zack's first R ability was not this, and why he got the HP. Is what it is. And then we have this, which honestly was pretty surprising to me. Levin's Spell Arcanum, right? So essentially, this is the same second R ability that Tifa and Vincent got on their anniversary costume. So it's basically a near full Elemental Arcanum, so the 30% instead of 35, and then the 20% attack stance command gauge max on top of that, guys. So this is going to be the case with Lucia and Cid's costumes. Now, this is really solid, guys. Really solid for a DPS, you know, for potentially a support DPS, which is like obviously what these characters were kind of built for. However, I wonder how often we are going to be able to have a support character that's basically just spamming the same ability over and over, because as you guys are going to see, even at OB6 on both Lucia and Sid's weapons, they do not go high at the first cast. So you're going to need to cast it twice, which honestly at this point in time of the game feels a bit like a letdown. It feels like a regression in, you know, I want to say a regression in power creep, which could be a good thing. Obviously it's like slowing the trajectory of the overall power creep of the game, but at the same time, like, you know, we have our DPS characters, right? We have Tifa, and she excels at DPS. She's absolutely fantastic at it, right? We have our healers, and now they're going to be focusing on healing. We have our tanks, and the tanks are going to be focusing on that. And now we have our support, right? And our support is going to have Imperil weapons that don't hit high on the first cast. It just makes no sense to me. So we'll get to that in a second. But honestly, the costume is pretty solid. I just wonder for Sid, at least, how often I would actually be using this costume, you know, over his astronaut costume. If you guys don't have that one, then I guess this is something to, you know, potentially keep an eye out for. But I think you would probably want to go for something that is a little bit more well-rounded. Do I have any Sid builds here? I do. Alright, so let's take a look at his costume right here, the astronaut. So this one gives buff debuff extension all allies, right? Which is already super solid because DPS, you know, have cast times, right? Like exploit weakness and stuff like that. And you're never going to be able to slot, you know, a buff duration on there. However, with this, they get a little bit of buff duration added to that, which is awesome, right? And then cosmic protection here, physical magic attack plus 10%, physical magic defense. So it already beats the defensive stats of the first R ability on the other one, and it gives both physical and magic attack. So probably not going to be replacing that anytime soon. Now, if we take a look at his other costume, which is his free costume, which I believe these are the only 3 that are out right now. This one's just HP magic defense. So obviously it's the new one is going to have a an edge on the kind of gear voucher costume that you guys can get right here. However, this one is pretty locked into lightning. So I think that if you guys are trying to build Sid, I still think that it's probably better to wait for a costume that is more all around. You know, if you're like a long-time player and you have most of the stuff in the game and you're trying to build Sid, like obviously for this battle ranking, Sid and Lucia are going to be awesome. I'm guessing that the mid to high potency cast on their weapons is not going to be a problem in the battle ranking. They're going to be there for extra damage and they're just going to be spamming those abilities. My question is, like, what about after the battle ranking? You know, like, how often are these characters going to be in a situation where they get to do something like that, right? So, like, Sid is typically going to want to run Enfeeble on almost all his builds. And then if you run this weapon as an Imperil, it's basically only going to be working against lightning creatures. So it's pretty locked into the element. And for me, I feel like if I'm going to be locked into an element, it's probably going to be, you know, locked in on a DPS or something like that. So it would be nice. The weapon is nice to have for Sid's kit for sure, but the weapon can be wishlistable, and in my opinion, that's what I'm going to be doing. I think that I will not be pulling for this banner. If I pull for anything this month so far, it would probably be Zack, just for the hope that one day he could potentially make a comeback. But overall, I would say pretty solid, interesting approach to the supports right here, you know, giving them that extra damage capacity. Let's take a look at the weapon, all right? So here at OB1, which is probably where most people would get it to, deal 480% magic lightning damage. It is AoE, all right? Also in range, HP self is 50% or more, lightning resist is decreased. This one at OB1 is low to mid. Always hated low to mid. This should have been mid to high at OB1 and high on the first cast at OB6, I think, in my opinion, guys. So in that regard, I think the weapon's a letdown. But other than that, it's pretty solid. The AoE lightning damage, the fact that it can increase its own potency by 1.2%, right, when buff is granted to Sid, times 1.2 damage. The R abilities are standard 46 over 39 at OB10 with the X sigil boost right here. All right, so if we take it to OB6, 618 magic attack, it'll go to 590% magic lightning damage, which basically adds 120% when Sid has a buff, so 710%. So it's a decent amount of damage, but it's probably not going to be enough to really do much unless your main DPS is pretty dang strong. I'm not sure how much of a support this is going to come in handy, but it is interesting to have. It'll definitely be, for me, this is definitely going to be something that I will be wishlisting as soon as it's available. I just don't, like, for me, battle ranking is not really, like, as motivating for me to pull on a banner as it would be for like Guild War, right? Where Guild War is like a whole team of us, we get together, we fight together, it's like the camaraderie aspect of it is so cool, and battle ranking typically just locked into a certain banner. I mean, there's definitely ways around it, but if you really want to compete in the top 20, you're basically locked into that banner, right? So for me, I think that the weapon is good. It'll be good to have. It's definitely a wishlist item. But I think also if you guys are trying to save crystals, there's definitely going to be a crossover, guys, on the horizon. It could be at the end of April. If it's not at the end of April, it's going to be definitely sometime in May, I would say. So, this is the time to kind of sit back, relax, take your time. If you're not sure about it, if you're on the fence, you can always just wait. Wait till the time. This banner is going to last until April 30th, so it's not that long. Let me see. It is April 9th right now, so it's 20 days, 21 days, right? So just let the time pass. Let's see what happens in the month, and then kind of go from there. So let's take a look at Lucia's right here. It is nice to see Lucia getting some love from the game after being disregarded for like the last 9 months and not getting basically anything. Super cool costume all around. I guess this is the hat that inspires her second R ability right here. I really do like her like highlights in her hair. She's got this whole like gambler dealer's tailcoat going on right here, and then the gun is interesting except for the white and the black on the barrel, which I feel like kind of makes it look kind of like what I say with kids, a little bit with Sids, a little bit toyish. But other than that, it's pretty solid. I think the costume is cool. I like the overall jacket. I mean, this looks like she could be like, in The Greatest Showman or something like that. So costume's looking cool. So let's look at the dealer's tailcoat. Physical magic ward, 15%, so that one's pretty solid. And then we have the earth and silk hat, right? Now, same problem with me in this one is that this is just locked into earth, right? You're not going to really use this. For me, like, if you have, so let's go to the costume voucher exchange for the 1.5, and let's go down to Lucia. Okay, so what do we have here? So we had Gothic Bunny, so buff debuff duration, and that's not the right one. Which is the right? This one right here, I think. Right, so this one is HP 5%, physical defense 15%, so you get HP there. You don't get the magic defense, but it does have the buff debuff extension on it, right? Which I feel like this is what you want on a support character. Like, this is probably my #1 choice for a support character, is buff debuff extension plus. So, like, giving them a DPS kind of sub-slot R ability, I just wonder, how potent that will be. Like, in certain fights, it's definitely going to be super valuable where she can just really spam her ability. But then you're also locked into earth the moment this banner passes, the moment it has its moment. Who knows when you'll use it again, right? Like, we had like Lucia get her holiday coat, and it's had its uses over the time since it first came out. But it's not seen or used very often, guys. So I think for me, for supporter characters, I want things that are more well-rounded, more versatile, and then I can, like, be specific when it comes to DPS characters. Because, you could have all the stuff, and you could have all these new banners for Sid and Lucia, but if you don't have the super strong DPS, it just ain't gonna matter. So really, the most important thing I would say are DPSs, and then healers, and then supports, right? And then also tanks in there. But DPS like kind of carry the game. A lot of things have a damage check in the game, etc. So I don't have this costume. I actually don't really have any costumes for Lucia. But this would be more something that I'm looking for, like in this realm, as opposed to just locking her in on Earth again, and then having watched the first Earth Arcanum for her and like how little it was used since it launched. I think it was in a battle ranking, and then we didn't use it for like 8 months after that or something. So, you know, I want something that's well-rounded for Lucia so I can bring her into more content and stuff like that. And I just don't think that this costume really, you know, answers that. I think, like I said, it's going to be solid for this battle ranking, and then who knows after that. Alright, so here we have, I heard that we actually had guaranteed slots on page 3 of the last banner for Zack, right? I didn't check it because why do I check page 3? I literally never go to page 3. Let's check here. Wow, they actually did do it. That's super cool. So page 3 actually has guaranteed weapons. It has less than page 2. Alright, but it does have a costume voucher there as well. You also lose a guaranteed weapon slot by having the costume thing here. But overall pretty solid. But guys, I mean, if you are pulling this banner, I don't recommend going past the first page. Get the costume you want, get out, wishlist the weapons later on. I think it's pretty simple from that perspective. Alright, now let's take a look at the Rifle of the Hunt. Alright, so OB1, 450% physical earth damage upon a single enemy. So hers is single target as opposed to AoE, right? And then on top of that, hers actually does less damage than Sid's. So other than that, we have the Earth Resist is decreased low to mid, so also kind of a disappointment there that it's not at least mid to high. And then we have when HP is 50% or more, physical defense is decreased low to mid. It's going to be 46 over 39 on the physical attack, physical ability potency. We have a triangle sigil boost and 2 physical attack boosts right there. All right, we have the Rifle of... Okay, that is already what we're talking about. Alright, so here we have it at OB6, 627 physical attack at that. Alright, so here we take it. Oh my gosh, guys. Sorry, the fact this weapon is just like... I'm just a little disappointed in these. Sid's, I could see why it's not high on the first cast at OB6. It's AoE, it has extra damage on it. I get it. This weapon, I don't get it. It literally makes no sense. Why do they never give Lucia any love in this game? It just... Do they not want people to want to play her? It just makes no sense to me. Right, so we have mid to high at OB6, right? Mid to high on the physical defense. And nothing really stand-outish about the weapon. 684 physical attack is pretty high. It's still mid to high at OB10, mid to high physical defense. So, honestly, guys, if you want to have something for Lucia, you know, I think that both of these are pretty easy skip overall, honestly. If you do want something, go in, get the costume, get out, wishlist the weapons later. But I think it's overall good to have banners, like I said, that are easily skippable. So I'm curious, are you guys going for the banner? Are you going to pull for it? If you are you going for Sid? Are you going for Lucia? Let me know in the comments below. This is going to be the end of my to pull or not to pull video. I think this one was pretty simple right off the bat. For at least my account, that easy skip or at least easy wait. I'll wait till the end of April and then we'll see from there. Obviously I'll miss using them in the battle ranking, but battle ranking is not what determines what I pull in the game, and I think for me it makes it more chill, more laid back. You know, I can really focus on the things that I really want. So that's going to conclude this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it today. If you did, please don't forget to drop a like, subscribe to the channel for more Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis content. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.